this morning's events, the failed attempt to arrest the president or a sitting president or be suspended is really quite
Yeah.
unprecedented.
Now then, South Korea's police have called off their attempt to arrest the suspended president, Yoon Suk after a 6-hour-long standoff with his security officers. President Yoon is under investigation for abusing his power and inciting an insurrection when he tried to impose martial law in early December. Dr Edward Howell is a Korea specialist at the University of Oxford. Edward, thank you for joining us this morning. Just bring us up to date with what's happening, why it's happening. I think there are more questions than answers with this one.
Thank you and good morning. This really is something quite surprising. I guess on the one hand, we could say that given President Yoon's invocation of martial law on the 3rd of December and the subsequent revocation of martial law, and the fact that he was impeached after after 2 consecutive weeks of trying to impeach him in terms of voting, this isn't that hugely surprising because Yoon has hitherto been very defiant and he has basically ignored the summonses that have been issued. But I guess what makes this development quite unprecedented is that in no time in the past has South Korea ever actually arrested a sitting president. This is the first time that a sitting president, albeit a suspended one, has faced arrest. So the developments in the future, particularly given Yoon's continued defiance, he's been speaking to his supporters, he's been writing letters to his supporters. As we've seen on the ground, there are supporters of the president who have been trying to block and have successfully blocked his arrest earlier today, this morning. This makes the future quite uncertain.
And just give us an idea of the reasons behind their loyalty. They have been incredibly loyal to him. We also know that some of them have been or some on the other side supporting his impeachment are actually flying US flags as well. Just talk us through those two sides of the debate and the argument here.
Yes, I mean, there is a clear polarization between Yoon's ruling Conservative Party, those who support the Conservative Party, and the main opposition party, which is a leftist party, the Democratic Party. I think that, the opposition, the leftist opposition, particularly the party's leader, Lee Jae-myung, he was a candidate for the presidential election in 2022. He was Yoon's main opponent. He's deemed Yoon to be a traitor. He has been obviously very heavily pushing for Yoon's arrest. And for a lot of people on the political left, the idea is that actually President Yoon has done very little for the country and has obviously been extremely corrupt. Now, I think it's worth saying that corruption, abuse of power, we've seen this before in South Korean politics and amongst South Korean presidents. But I guess his supporters would point out that actually Yoon's policies towards North Korea, and particularly his foreign policy outreach towards Japan, have been quite good. And they have a point. Yoon has, particularly in the first few years of his incumbency, been able to try and mend ties between South Korea and Japan. And so this is why this issue really comes at quite an interesting time, with political change in Tokyo and political change soon to come in Washington.
Tell us what you think happens now, because clearly this is a very tense situation. What's the next step? What is the next step, both legally in terms of what should happen and what you think may well happen? Because clearly this is a situation where the law is part of it, but it's not the only part of it.
Yes, and I think we must remember that Yoon Suk-yeol, before he became president, he was the prosecutor general. So he has quite a strong understanding of the legal system. And this will be fed into the advice that he is given by his team. Moving forward, I think, well, in the immediate term, the arrest warrant expires in 3 days' time on the 6th of January. We've got two ongoing processes at the moment. We have Yoon's impeachment, and then obviously we have the impeachment of the acting president, or the now former acting president, Han Duck-soo, who's impeached only very recently. So these two processes will have to stay their course. And then, obviously, we have very recent charges given to the army chief, Pansu, who had been appointed the commander of martial law on that Tuesday evening in the beginning of December. He was indicted and is due to face trial on account of insurrection. I think that South Korea moving forward needs to show its resilience as a democracy. And whilst we wait and see how these events play out, I think this morning's events, the failed attempt to arrest the president or a sitting president or be suspended, is really quite unprecedented.
There's a lot that you've illuminated there. Really appreciate that. That's Edward Howell there, Dr. Edward Howell, Korea specialist at the University of Oxford.
차 어디 세워놨는데 어디 세우려고?